I'll give you just one reason why the any day argument is weaker. The reason any day argument is weaker is Allah is saying a ruh is descending on any day towards Allah. For how long? By our count, how long? 50,000 years, right? But doesn't Jibreel alayhi salam come down every year in Ramadan? تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. Right? So that this stop the math doesn't math. Why is Jibreel alayhi salam mentioned separately in this ayah? The angels rise up and so does ar-ruh. So they say that this is because of his, excellent status, his, unique status with Allah. And we find that in the Quran also, Allah has given him a unique status, So, عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين, and other places in the Quran where Jibreel alayhi salam has been given a very particular status. And so perhaps that's the reason he's been mentioned separately. I'll share my thoughts on that at the end after I share some things from the Mufassirun with you. قِيلَ خَلْقٌ, this gets really interesting. هم حفظة الملائكة مطلقا كما أن الملائكة حفظة الناس. Some Mufassirun, Alusi mentions this in his tafsir in Ruh al-Ma'ani. He mentions that on Judgment Day, the angels will rise. The angels are supposed to be the guardians of human beings. Yursil alaykum hafadha. But there are angels whose job is to guard those angels. And they're all rising together. So there's layers of, by the way, that means above us, a level above us are the angels who are protecting us. And a level above them are angels who are protecting those angels. These are levels. And what are levels called? Al-Ma'arij min Allahi dhil Ma'arij. Right? So there's a connection to that term. وَقِيلَ مَلَكٌ عَظِيمٌ يَقُومُ وَحْدَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ صَفًّا وَيَقُومُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ كُلُّهُمْ صَفًّا. It's also been said that this is referring to a great angel who will stand. One row is just for him, and the other rows are for the angels. وَقَالَ أَبُو صَالِحٍ, then it gets weird. We have some weird opinions in tafsir too. They don't go back to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, not directly anyway, but they get pretty interesting. So I'll share, I don't agree with them, but I'll share them with you for the purpose of academic honesty. He says, Abu Salih says, خَلْقٌ كَهَيْئَةِ النَّاسِ وَلَيْسُوا بِالنَّاسِ. There's some other creation, ar-ruh, other than angels, other than people. They're not people, but there's some other creation. What other creation? I don't know, it's just ruh. So that's all he says. Then there's actually an opinion that this might be referring to human beings. I will strongly disagree with this opinion as we go further. I'll share with you why this is not, the souls of human beings are going to rise, because human beings are not rising on Judgment Day. If this is a reference to Judgment Day, human souls are not rising on Judgment Day. They're being elevated, and they are, the rising is a much separate incident. Okay. But then, I don't know if I put that in my notes or I was so disturbed that I removed it. But Imam Razi mentions, I think. Oh yeah, there it is. وَعِنْدَ هَذَا قَالَ بَعْضُ الْمُكَاشِفِينَ. So some people that are more spiritually inclined, we have a Sufi tradition in Islam, right? So some of those Sufi philosophers looked at this ayah and they came up with this notion. I don't know the origin. I really don't know the origin. But I wanted to mention this with you because this is also found in our tradition. إِنَّ الرُّوحَ نُورٌ عَظِيمٌ هُوَ أَقْرَبُ الْأَنْوَارِ إِلَى جَلَالِ اللَّهِ. That the ruh is actually a great light. So the angels are going to rise, and there's this light that Allah has created that is going to rise to Allah. وَمِنْهُ تَتَشَعَّبُ أَرْوَاحُ سَائِرِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْبَشَرِ فِي آخِرِ دَرَجَاتِ مَنَازِلِ الْأَرْوَاحِ. Basically what he's saying is there's some creature Allah made that's made of light. It's, how you have the electrical grid and there's a powerhouse that's generating all the electricity, and then electricity is flowing to every household, right? Well, there's a power grid ruh, which is the concentration of all the light, and all the angels, which are a ruh, and all the human beings which have a ruh, are being generated from this mega ruh, right? And that's what he's referring to as ruh. Like there's this one collective thing Allah created called a ruh, and all the spirits and all the angels, all the souls of human beings are generated from it. In some other riwayat, again not sahih, this thing that Allah made, this light that Allah made, speaks all the languages and has all these different kinds of knowledge. But none of this is attributed to the Quran itself. So this goes pretty far from the text of the Quran. But I wanted to share with you that when we simply say, oh, we should just study tafsir, we should follow our ulama, and yes, our ulama said remarkable things, but then sometimes you also find some pretty wild things in tafsir, and you're just sitting there going, what? there's a soul generator, and it spits out souls. Where are we getting this from? But it's there, But then finally, وَأَمَّا ظَاهِرُ قَوْلِ الْمُتَكَلِّمِينَ وَهُوَ أَنَّ الرُّوحُ وَجِبْرِيلُ عَلَيْهِ. But the obvious is that this is who? Jibreel alayhi salam. So stop going all over the neighborhood, just stick to what's obvious. This is Jibreel alayhi salam. Now, I will add something of my own based on one commentary. This is the commentary actually. This is also Imam Razi. ثم ها هنا دقيقة. There's a subtle notice here. هي أنه تعالى ذكر عند العروج الملائكة أولا والروح ثانيا. So when ascent, when going up, Allah mentions the angels first and the ruh second. But if you know anything about Surah An-Naba, يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة. The ruh is mentioned first and the angels are mentioned second. وذكر عند القيام الروح أولا والملائكة ثانيا كما في قوله يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا. وهذا يقتضي كون الروح أولا في درجة النزول وآخرا في درجة الصعود. This suggests that the ruh comes first when coming down, but goes last when going up. So it's mentioned last when going up and mentioned first when going down. Let me try to make sense of this for you. Bear with me. This is the event of Judgment Day. Multiple places in the Quran, Allah says that angels will come down on Judgment Day. You know that? That angels will descend on Judgment Day. In fact, even in the surah right before this one, in Surah Al-Haqqa, the arsh is descending actually. وَالْمَلَكُ عَلَىٰ أَرْجَائِهَا وَيَحْمِلُ عَرْشَ رَبِّكَ فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ ثَمَانِيَةٌ. So the judgment is beginning, and Allah says other places in the Quran, هل ينظرون إلا أن يأتيهم الله في ظلل من الغمام والملائكة وقضي الأمر. Right? So there's multiple places in the Quran where we find that the angels on Judgment Day will come down. They will start descending. The legions of angels will start descending. That seems to contradict what we're reading in this surah. If this ayah is about Judgment Day, what is it saying? Angels don't come down, they go up. So what in the world's going on? Let me help you make sense of this. When a king makes an announcement, or the king in the ancient times had a palace, right? And he wants to assemble his armies. And he has on his balcony this guy that blows the horn. And the armies know what that means. What does it mean for the armies? For them to assemble in front of him, right? So no matter what they're doing, they all ascend before the king's court, ready to take instruction, right? So before the armies are going to march to war, before they do that, they have to appear before the king for him to address them, for them to be ready for the massive invasion or whatever it's going to be. So there's a military assembly. There's a military assembly. When Judgment Day begins, it's as if Allah is calling the legions of angels, His army, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ جُنُودَ رَبِّكَ إِلَّا هُوَ. He's calling the legions of His armies to be presented before Him before they descend for the invasion of the earth. So this is actually referring to the armies of Allah being collected. And now the thing with the armies is, who's the commander-in-chief of that army that Allah appointed? Who's the general? Is Jibreel alayhi salam. Does the infantry or the lower rank soldiers, do they show up first and get in place and then the general show up? Or is the general standing there waiting for everybody to show up? How does it work? The soldiers show up first. They line up first. And then they're told, attention, commander's coming in. You understand? So him being mentioned last in the sequence almost suggests the armies are getting together, and the final step of the armies getting together is their commander will show up, will appear. But when the armies march, when the armies proceed towards the enemy, who's leading the charge? The general. So when they descend, يَوْمَ يَقُومُ الرُّوحُ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ صَفًّا. Right? So that's the other place in the Quran. So this is actually a pretty powerful description of what will happen on the earth on that day. Now, let's take another couple of steps about this, a day that will last 50,000 years. Some mufassirun looked at this. Basically, it boils down to two opinions. Okay, this ayah boils down to two opinions. One opinion is this is talking about Judgment Day. Another opinion is this is talking about any day. Okay, Judgment Day or any day. And whatever reading I've been able to do, I find far too much evidence supporting Judgment Day over any day. Okay, So we're going to go with Judgment Day. And I'll give you just one reason why the any day argument is weaker. The reason any day argument is weaker is Allah is saying Ar-Ruh is descending on any day towards Allah. For how long? By our count, how long? 50,000 years, right? But doesn't Jibreel alayhi salam come down every year in Ramadan? تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. Right? So that this stops the math doesn't math. Okay, the math ain't mathing when you do this. So that's one problem. But there are other problems with it also. So we're going to talk about Judgment Day. Now the problem is, where does this concept come from? It comes from the word yawmin. Yawmin. Yawmin means a day. But this is a tanween لإفادة التعظيم والتهويل, for a magnanimous day, for a great day, that the angels and Jibreel will rise towards Allah on a great day whose count is 50,000 years. The word count or amount is miqdar. And this word is for precise calculation. It's used for precise calculation. The old Arabs used to use al-aqdaru min al-khayl. When a horse gallops, right, and it's got the two front legs and the two back legs. So when it gallops, whenever it lands its front two legs, it makes a print. And the back legs land exactly where the front legs landed. It's that precise in its gallop that these four legs land where the hind legs landed every time, right? And they match every time. That's called al-aqdar. الذي إذا سار وقعت رجلاه موقع يديه. يديه means the four legs of the animal. Okay, so from it comes the meaning of calculation or of precise measure. Now let's look at the Judgment Day or this world. We're going to look at the Judgment Day interpretation. Within that, some people said, well, this is literally 50,000 years, right? The angel will start descending, rising up to Allah for a time that will take 50,000 years. So in other words, the angels haven't even come down yet for Judgment Day to begin, but the prep for Judgment Day itself might take 50,000 years, just that much. And this worried some Sahaba, and they asked the Prophet ﷺ about it. This is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, right? And they said, how long is this day? This is too long of a day. Ma atwal hadha al-yawm. This is uslub al-ta'ajjub. So he said, this is a really long day. How are we going to survive this day? And the Prophet ﷺ told him, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِي بِيَدِهِ, I swear by the one who holds my life in his hands, or in his hand, إِنَّهُ لَيُخَفَّفُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِ. This day will be made lighter for the believer. حَتَّى يَكُونَ أَهْوَنَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ مَكْتُوبَةً يُصَلِّيهَا فِي الدُّنْيَا. It'll be like a single prayer, a single fard prayer he prays in this dunya. This is teaching us time will work differently for believers, and it will work differently for disbelievers. You notice the language up top was لِلْكَافِرِينَ لَيْسَ لَهُ دَافِعٌ. So the long, exhaustive expanse of Judgment Day is actually focused on the disbeliever. And Rasulullah ﷺ is telling us that for the believer, it will actually feel like a very short period of time, right? So it's even time will feel different. Time will feel different. By the way, if you're having a bad time, time slows down. And if you're having a good time speeds up, right? Believers on Judgment Day, I'm pretty sure, they're in the shade of Allah, they're al-akhilla on that day. Allah is their wali on that day. Yes, there'll be some nervousness, but after that, they're having a good old time. But, the kuffar, it's a different story. In fact, if you look at the description of kuffar on Judgment Day, they sound as if they're already in hell. Even though they're not in hell yet, they sound like they are. Okay? Now, on the 50,000 years, وَهُوَ عَلَى ظَاهِرِهِ وَحَقِيقَتِهِ وَإِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ 50 مَوْطِنًا كُلُّ مَوْطِنٍ أَلْفُ سَنَةٍ مِّن سِنِّيِ الدُّنْيَا أي حقيقة. Meaning, some people took this literally and said, this day with Allah will be made of 50 hours, or 50 moments, if you want, 50 sections. Each section is 1,000 years. And that's what makes it 50,000. Now, let me just put things in perspective for those of you who have not thought about this kind of thing before. Allah says Allah created the heavens and the earth in how long? 6 days. Fi sittati ayyam, right? Now, for us, a day is how many hours? How do we calculate the day? The full rotation of what? The earth. If the skies are being created in a day, And we measure a day based on the Earth's relationship with the sun. Isn't that true? Okay. When the entire universe is being created, the sun is barely a speck, isn't it? The sun's not even a significant body in the larger scape of the just the known universe, right? So if the day is measured by some form of rotation, a complete movement, then this day with Allah that He talks about 6 days, what are they rotating around? Right? And that must be a much bigger rotation than the one we can imagine. You understand? So even though Allah is using the word day, you can't really think about the word day the way we think about our day. You understand? Because these entities weren't even being created yet. They were in the process of being created while Allah was using the word day. You understand? So the common language is being used, yes, but it's being used to say, yes, there's no, the words for what this actually is beyond my vocabulary and your vocabulary, because we can't think of anything. We can't make words for things that are beyond our perception. So Allah is using words in the Quran that are within our perception, but He's referring to things that are actually far beyond our perception. Still using those words, right? So that's something you have to be mindful of. Now, some interesting commentary on the metaphorical meaning of 50,000 years. المعنى مقدار ما يقضي فيه من الحساب قدر ما يقضي بالعدل في 50,000 سنة من أيام الدنيا وهو مروي عن عكرمة. Ikrimah had an opinion, رضي الله عنه, that this means that, the amount of cases that you would have to judge and finally arrive at a fair judgment, if we ran all those cases continuously nonstop, it would take 50,000 years. And that's what Allah does in a day. Allah will solve 50,000 years worth of cases in a day, is what He's comparing it to justice, actually. And if you know anything about cases, they take quite a long time. Right? Cases can get pretty drawn out. وَالْعَرَبُ تَصِفُ أَوْقَاتَ الشِّدَّةِ. This is funny, and don't be offended. I didn't make the poetry. This is the Arabs. Okay? I just read it. وَالْعَرَبُ تَصِفُ أَوْقَاتَ الشِّدَّةِ وَالْحُزْنِ بِالطُّولِ. Arabs describe difficult times with long period. وَأَوْقَاتَ الرَّخَاءِ وَالْفَرَحِ بِالْقِصَرِ. And when they're having a good time, they describe it as a short period. Okay? Kind of like time flies when you're having fun. Kind of like that. Here's the poem. وَمِنْ قِصَرِ اللَّيْلِ إِذَا زُرْتِنِي أَشْكُو وَتَشْكِينَ مِنَ الطُّولِ. The guy, he loves this woman and she visits him. It's his wife. We'll just make it halal. This is Jahiliyyah times, but we'll make it halal. So she lives out of town. She lives with her in-laws. Okay, she still lives with her family. They're Pakistani. So she comes and visits for just one night for him. And he says, the night is so short that I complain that it's so short, while you're complaining the night is too long. Yeah. Anyway, so the other reading is not. وقيل الكلام بيان لغاية ارتفاع تلك المعارج وبعد مداها على سبيل التمثيل والتخييل والمراد أنها في غاية البعد والارتفاع. So others are saying this is not literal. 50,000 is an expression to describe how far. It's actually not even talking about time, it's talking about distance. And this is an important concept that you should be aware of. In physics, obviously, we have 3 dimensions and now we have 4 dimensions and 5 dimensions, and quantum physics is taking us into many, many dimensions, right? That's what's happening. But at the very basic level, we all know we exist in times, we exist in time and space, right? And we use them interchangeably. Hey, how far are you? I'm 10 miles away. No, how far are you? I'm 20 minutes away. So it's either distance or time, right? And of course, in physics, you have light travels light years, right? So we're measuring time and distance kind of conflate with each other in this physical world, right? So if somebody says that the journey between this village and that village is 3 months on camel, or it's 4 months by sea, or whatever, right? Now imagine the Arabs have to visualize a journey that's how long? 50,000 years. So they're thinking about this in distance. But distance and time are, they have an interplay with each other, right? So it's as if you're saying it's an infinite distance. But there's another dimension to that I want you to think about in terms of distance. If distance and time are interplaying with each other. You know the oldest records we have of intelligent human activity on the planet, the oldest anthropological records we have of any tool that a human being made, or a farming device, or a home that was built, or some scratches on a wall or whatever. You could barely find anything past 10,000 years. Maybe if you really want to push the imagination, 20,000. But that's most archaeologists, anthropologists won't even agree with you, right? That's how far back we can go. In other words, 50,000 years ago, if humanity existed, whatever they were doing, ain't nobody know. And my mind works in weird ways. I have this active imagination. So I imagine, once we got to farming a few thousand years ago, it's not long ago that we got to farming. Let's just say we got to farming 6,000, 7,000 years ago. So it took us 6,000 to 7,000 years to get to satellites, right? To get to Wi-Fi, and to get to quantum physics, and to get to where we are now. It's this many years. Now imagine what kind of advancements would we have made in 50,000 years? Like just if this took 6,000 years, what kind of advancements can human beings have made in 50,000? And I don't think human beings before us were stupid. So if human beings existed, let's say 50,000 years ago, let's just play this game. If they existed 50,000 years ago, you think they took them 44,000 years before they figured out farming? You honestly think that? You know what I think? I think they were smart as us, maybe even smarter, and they advanced like we advance. And maybe it took us 6,000 years to get somewhere, maybe it took them 3. Okay, let's say they were slower. They were the remedial kids in the back of the class. It took them 10,000 years. But they could also have gotten to a very advanced life in this world. And then eventually, what did Allah do with them? Wipe them out. And the few that survived, all their technology, all their advancements, Allah covered it, whatever He wanted to cover, He covered. Buried away, deep under the ground, destroyed completely. And humanity starts over again, and they have to start learning all over again, and we advance again, and our study begins. We have a collective amnesia. We can't even think back 50,000 years. We can't. We don't know what happened 50,000 years ago. So when Allah is saying, كَانَ مِقْدَارُهُ 50 أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ, it's as if He's saying, it's not just your lifetime, it's the entire humanity can't remember in their entire collective lifetime. It's longer than that. That's one day of journey, that day, subhanallah. So في يوم كان مقداره 50 ألف سنة. Ibn Abi Mulaika was asked, he narrates that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was asked about this day, and he said something really beautiful. I really found it profound. He said, Ibn Abbas said about this ayah, أَيَّامٌ سَمَّاهَا اللَّهُ تَعَالَى. These are names, these are days that Allah named, Allah described, because now He's saying, I don't know if this is not the same day as our day, so this is something called a day that Allah Himself named as such. وَهُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِهَا كَيْفَ تَكُونَ. And He knows better what exactly they're going to be, or how they're going to be. وَأَكْرَهُ أَنْ أَقُولَ فِيهَا مَا لَا أَعْلَمُ. And I would hate to say something about them that I have no knowledge of. So He just acknowledged His utter lack of ability to grasp this relativity of time with the angels. One thing I'll add to that before we go on is, in physics now we know objects, the faster they move, the slower they experience time. So that's something we know now in physics to some level, right? So if an object is moving faster, time is slowed down for that object. It feels time moving slowly. Okay? Now imagine how fast must the angels be moving that a day feels like how long? 50,000 years. Like this might be a commentary on the unfathomable speed of the angels, that a day's journey to them, time slows down for them so much that it feels like 50,000 years. So time works very differently, and the relativity of time is something that's very clearly, explicitly mentioned in the Book of Allah. Now, okay, there are other places in the Quran where Allah does mention, a day that's the amount of 1,000 years. But you'll notice in those places, مِمَّا تَعُدُّونَ is mentioned. And in this ayah, مِمَّا تَعُدُّونَ is not mentioned, meaning from what you can count. From what you can count. And I would argue, inshallah, when I get to Surah Al-Sajdah one day, I'll describe this in more detail. Those ayat are talking about something else. This ayah is talking about Judgment Day. In fact, those ayat are talking about regular days. This ayah is talking about Judgment Day. So there's a difference between the two. And Surah Al-Hajj is talking about the day in which a punishment arrives in this world, and Surah Sajda is talking about the day in which Allah's, the planning of Allah on every single day.
Hey guys, you just watched a small clip of me explaining the Quran in depth as part of the Deeper Look series. Studying the Quran in depth can seem like a really intimidating thing that's only meant for scholars. Our job at Bayyinah is to make deeper study of the Quran accessible and easy for all of you. So take us up on that challenge. Join us for this study, the Deeper Look of the Quran, for this surah and many other surahs on BayyinahTV.com under the Deeper Look section.